mostly Mike, worked on this ordinance, provided me a version of it, which I provided some input, and Mike put the rest together and sent it around. And now it's really up for discussion. There's really not much here. You have the ordinance in front of you?
We do.
We're really up for discussion of these various classes and what you want at these classes. We put what we thought was reasonable for this township. And the rest is, like I said, up to you guys for discussion, back to us. Mike, anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, that's where we want to get to. I just didn't know what level of introduction, if everyone's familiar now with the memo of the 6 classes that we're talking about and what the draft proposes to put them in, then we're ready for feedback.
Whatever works. On the second, whatever it was, email we got from Gail, they picked 10 acres. Was there a specific reason we picked 10 acres?
No.
No.
Threw a number in there. We were debating what to do there, and we just got a number to discuss.
Actually, that was discussed with Jim Kyle.
Oh,
It was
okay.
left blank. With Jim Kyle, we said, what would a typical size be? What we don't want is, we don't want to have right to farm on a 3-acre lot and up to the 50-foot setbacks, you've got an industrial building, even though we want right to farm. So if somebody's in the right location and the Board of Adjustment approved that, we're not against that, but we don't want it to be permitted. So Jim Kyle told me the applications he's aware of, and I don't want to quote,
Yeah, you might quote them on that,
But I
because
believe-
you did tell me that tonight.
like 270 by 270, the 70,000 square foot structures are where it sort of becomes economical.
Mhm.
So there's a judgment and just have a placeholder to have somebody to give us feedback. We thought, what does 10 acres look like? What does a 270 by 270 building look like? Not going to impact the neighbors too badly. We thought, let's start with an idea of make it permitted in 10 acres and conditional. out of
Chapter
that.
16 raises some important issues related to the right to farm and farmland assessment laws. Under Chapter 16, a cannabis cultivator cannot operate on land that is subject to farmland assessment. Furthermore, growing cannabis would likely not be protected by the New Jersey Right to Farm Act because the law requires that commercial farms be in compliance with all federal and state statutes of rules and regulations to qualify. And because cannabis cultivation is illegal at the federal level, the growing and processing of cannabis would not be protected under this law.
That doesn't mean you're not allowed to farm. It means you can't get credit for your farmland assessment.
Well, I'm just
by
saying,
doing
people
it.
have to roll their farms out.
Yeah, exactly. But it may be economically feasible for somebody to do it, I don't know.
Somebody come in and say, well, I'm gonna grow this because I got a farm, and this is under right to farm, so it's not, you know.
And that's until the federal government makes it legal
Right.
potentially, so it's a
But,
transition.
and having a secondary crop cultivation. I don't know why they would have to roll out of that.
Well, I'm just
If they
saying, the way I'm reading this, that's why I was looking to John, it sounds like you can't, like I have farm assessed property.
Right.
I can't grow cannabis on my, cultivate it on my property.
But if you, and rumblings, my accountant lives over that way, the odor.
Because they process.
It doesn't have to be burning it either, it's just from cutting.
At times,
Mhm.
and they're having apparently, that's Reddington or where, that's Reddington
That's
Township.
Reddington, yeah.
Reddington's having, they did everything correctly, but whatever filter systems they're using, which was approved by the state, aren't working
One
well.
over in Reddington Township. And they actually have been going in 2 phases. Their phase 1, they got an exemption for site plan that allowed them to start growing. So they're right now about 30% capacity while they're building out the rest of the facility. So they have contractors in and out of there minute by minute. So their building is not secure from an air handling standpoint. I was in it 2 weeks ago. I was in it for half an hour.
Are you
And
filming us back
The
there?
biggest source of odor was uncontrolled access into and out of the building. The site plan was actually approved last Monday night. And one of the conditions was the applicant put together, the architect, a schedule of every opening in the building with the requirements for either a charcoal filter or other type of filter on that. And I was going to make the suggestion here on this ordinance tonight that odor and odor mitigation is probably something that should be very considered very carefully in this.
Locally, we do nothing by August 22nd, we get the state rules, whatever they're doing.
Right.
Or we ban it entirely, and so we looked and tried to take a first crack, and obviously came to you for your expertise to say, let's do a few obvious first crack ideas. Let's say we want to support our farmers. Now, maybe if we don't want to, we can't, because growing is more complex than we understood up till now.
Yeah, it's not planting corn.
But we clearly wanted to put we wanted to isolate retail along the highway, so we don't have the traffic in our B1 areas, just in B2 along the highway. We wanted to only have the potential for manufacturing and the like, distribution where we'd have a lot of truck traffic in our industrial zones. So that's our starting, as Abe said, that's our starting thought. And the question is, given the timeline that we're on, we either get backed into a corner where we say up or down and we don't do anything, or we can get some feedback sooner, the next couple of weeks.
Towns around you decide not to do it, you can't be within 1,000 feet of their border, and I'm wondering the B2 zone, if Hampton, I don't know, Clinton Township, Hampton, if that comes into play at all.
Yeah, Mansfield Township.
You got Bethlehem
Well,
Township across.
Our B2 doesn't go that.
I just
Our
don't know
B2
where it ends, and it's just a tidbit to think about,
B2 go-
but they haven't come up with all of the rest of the rules, and so a lot of the towns are opting out for 6 months because they're supposed to come up with their rules by August 21st. You can always go back, like we could work a parallel path if you wanted to, you can opt out now, but this, I just wanna read this, because this is one of the ordinances, and I got this from the League of Municipalities site. Whereas officials from 2 prominent nonprofit organizations that have been established for the purpose of advising New Jersey municipalities, which is the New Jersey's League, and also Dick Cushing's ILGU, or whatever, the lawyer association that he's the president of, on legal matters, have been presented by the Act. Those organizations being, oh, here it is, this New Jersey State League of Municipalities and the New Jersey Institute of Local Government Attorneys have strongly urged that due to the complexity and novelty of the Act, the many areas of municipal law that are or may be impacted in decisions as to whether or to what extent cannabis or medical cannabis should be permitted for land use purposes or otherwise regulated in any particular municipality, and the relatively short duration in which the Act would allow such decisions to be made before imposing an automatic authorization of such uses in specific zoning districts subject to unspecified conditions. The most prudent course of action for all municipalities, whether or not generally in favor of cannabis or medical cannabis land development and uses, would be to prohibit all such uses within the Act's 180-day period in order to ensure sufficient time to carefully review all aspects of the Act and its impact. And it's all
thought answer rating, but Ed Kohler quoted your colleague Dick Cushing and the League of Municipalities as stating that it is possible for us to opt entirely out of cannabis by ordinance by August 22nd in order to buy time to have more considered views, and in the months right after August 22nd, we could then start allowing, with different conditions, different cannabis activity in the township. And I think I would agree, my understanding was up until now, it wasn't clear what we could do if we opt out entirely, how quickly we could opt back in. It was very clear that if we do nothing, we can't opt out of anything for 5 years. But if we opt out entirely by August 22nd, can we opt in a staged manner?
The answer is yes, if the practical, there are considerations though which have to do with licensing, so.
That we did discuss as
Okay,
well.
so I believe that it's fairly certain that opting, the league took a position that the legislation, the enactment, was basically rammed down municipalities' throats, and was the multi-year battle that went into the formulation of the statute was then compressed at the municipal level into a matter of months. And quite frankly, as tonight shows, in a multi-pronged process, there's almost no room for error, so to speak.
Right.
So that the recommendation, the hope was that this, and I've seen this, and this is an accurate version of it, it was that there'd be some recognition by our state representatives that that was the case, that they had proceeded in haste, and that the timelines imposed upon the municipalities were so abbreviated to not allow for proper consideration. Well, just like many other township clerk or each of these bodies have opinions as to things that are mandated by the state, there's not a lot of concern about the operational impact of this. There was a lot of late revisions to the cannabis legislation as well as the associated legislation, but none of it really designed to make our jobs any easier or provide us any additional time. So, something simple as like we said, to add 90 days onto it or something like that. This is a race to the revenue bit, quite frankly.
So you can opt out now? Is that the, yes?
Yes, we have the discretion to opt out of all 6 classes, yes.
Right now? We decide we wanna opt back in so we can continue forward with some sort of ordinance. Is that how this works? For the township committee to do this?
Yes, the inverse not being so, but yes, I believe that's absolutely can occur. If again, there is a concern expressed by the industry, not by municipalities, that telling potential licensees that want to operate here that we're prohibiting it may impact their ability to acquire the necessary state license in a timely fashion. I can't, it's really difficult to predict what's going on with that process because the committee was just seated 3 weeks ago, but.
Partially, yeah.
Yeah.
Facility. And so he's intimately familiar with the details and the considerations and the concern. And so what we quickly came to the conclusion was this we can't have a reasoned understanding of what regulations should be on this in the next 2 months in order to.
I think that was the purpose of this,
Right.
was that, again, as I stated,
So we're
the lack of understanding at the state level by many people
As well
who
as
quite
the
frankly have served in this room or rooms just like this,
Yeah.
as to how comprehensive to get it right.
So the consensus is that the prudent step is probably to pass an ordinance to opt completely out while we have considered input and the regulations are firming up to potentially opt into certain categories with certain restrictions, but we don't see that that's possible in the next few weeks to meet the August 22nd deadline. And so as long as you're just confirming our understanding that we could opt out by August 22nd, and if we get input and rules firm up in December, we can start opting back in.
They're supposed to have their rules by August 21st, that commission, that cannabis commission. And at that point, we could be working our path and then tweak whatever we have.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't mean, and obviously this conversation can continue, whether it's each body separately or this again, but, because again, there's a recognition that seems, unless there are municipalities that are immediately prohibiting all 6 classes in what I believe is a permanent nature. They don't have there's really not a lot of sentiment to do what's being considered here and an intensive review of all the appropriate factors. And then there are other towns that are just, it's a potential tax revenue source. Let's have at it. And again, then there's those that are going to do nothing to then have it permitted as a conditional use. So